What's up? Welcome to episode 12 of the ASKJV show. Today we're talking about how to process tracks that were recorded with multiple mics, some overhead mic tips, and processing drum samples.
3, 2, 1.
This is the ASKJV show.
Our first question comes from Steven. When you're mixing guitars and you have two mics that are recording the same source, do you process each track individually or on a bus?
In general, if I have two mics on the same source, I will process them on a bus. So that definitely goes for recording a guitar amp. If I have two mics on a guitar amp, I'll definitely bus those to a new track or a new aux input and process those together just as one tone, after I find the balance between the two mics with the faders. There are some exceptions to this, though, mostly with drums. So if I'm miking the inside of a kick and the outside, especially if I've got a sub-kick mic on the outside of the kick where it's really just capturing the sub of the kick drum, I will process those separately instead of on a bus because I'm going to use way different EQ on the inside kick mic compared to the outside sub-kick. The sub-kick, the outside kick mic, I'm probably going to filter out all of the high end, maybe even above like 100 hertz and just have the sub there. So I'm going to do that on its own track so that I'm not doing the crazy high-end boost that I would be doing on the inside kick mic. Same with snare top and bottom. The sound of those are just so totally different that you need to process those differently. So those are some exceptions, but in general for guitars, for bass and stuff like that, I'm usually blending the two mics together with faders, busing that to an aux, and then treating it as one sound.
Our next question comes from Pat. What tips could you give for overhead condensers when the drum room is less than ideal acoustically? As far as space goes, I don't have the luxury of high ceilings. Most people just say turn them down in the mix. I'm sure I'm not the only one plagued with a less than ideal drum room.
Yeah, my drum room wasn't ideal either in my project studio. It was a fairly small room. It definitely had treatment on the walls like you see behind me here, the fiberglass panels all around the room in the corners, but then also up above on the ceiling above the drum kit. That definitely helps. So if you can get any treatment up there on the ceiling, that will definitely help you. And make sure you do as much treatment as you can in a small room because you don't, there's not going to be a good room sound there. So there's no reason not to kind of get a really good amount of treatment on the walls there. And it's not that expensive to do. The other thing I would say is use small diaphragm condensers, the pencil looking mics. Those are going to give you more of a direct sound down on the cymbals. And especially if you mic them closely. So for heavier music, rock, metal, and stuff, usually with the cymbals, you're looking for a really clear, crisp, almost isolated sound of the cymbals. Not too isolated, of course, but so you don't want to mic them, like way up above the cymbals. You want to keep it down, maybe 1 to 2 feet above the cymbals, depending on what you can get away with. You can't mic them too close, but try to be fairly close to the cymbals, almost as if you were spot miking or close miking the cymbals as opposed to trying to get an overall kit picture from the overheads. That was always my approach, and that helped me with the overheads as well. I wouldn't say turn them down in the mix. You need good cymbals in the mix to give it movement and energy and everything. So those are my tips: small diaphragm condensers and miking them close and getting some good treatment in your room.
Our last question comes from Dez. In regards to EQing the stock Superior drums and replacing the kick and snare, do you still do extensive EQ boosts like you would with a traditional drum kit? Or are the samples already EQ'd to begin with and nothing else is necessary?
Hey Des, glad you're enjoying the mixing course. For programmed drums, you're not doing the crazy exaggerated boosts on there if you're using already kind of pre-processed drum samples. Like you said, they've already got EQ and usually a compression baked in there. So usually it's only some very subtle tweaks with the EQ on samples like that. You pretty much got the right idea. You're not going to be doing a huge 10 dB boost on the top end of a sample. Of course, I will say if you've got a sample and it doesn't sound quite where you want it, then do whatever it takes to get the sound you want. Don't be afraid or don't think that you are not allowed to EQ on a drum sample. But just in general, you're not going to have as much processing on a sample compared to a normal raw live drum kit. Okay, thanks for checking out this week's episode. I enjoyed answering these questions as always. If you've got questions about mixing, editing, tracking, producing, whatever, the business side of things, make sure you send in your questions to askjvpod.com, and we'll try to answer them in a future episode. If you're not on my email list already, make sure you head to hardcoremusicstudio.com and sign up there. You'll get my free mixing cheat sheet, which will tell you the best kind of starting points for EQ and compression for every track in your mix. Plus, I send out my best content and all my frequent updates through the email list, so make sure you jump on that. And lastly, I'm going to shamelessly plug my book here. This is Mixing Heavy Music, and this is mixing advice that's tailored to hardcore rock and metal music that's going to help take your mixes to another level. So I've heard some really great feedback from this book from the people who have read it, saying they're finally kind of understanding the fundamentals and getting a firm grasp on things like EQ, compression, and workflow, and all of that. And plus there's some really good tips. We've got kind of screenshots of different plugin settings that you can apply right away. So check it out. This is the hard copy I'm holding here. You can grab that on Amazon only. But if you want the ebook, you can also get that on Amazon. It's instant download, or you can get a better price by going directly through my website at hardcoremusicstudio.com. All right, so submit your questions, grab the book. I will see you on next week's episode.